friends and neighbors. I'm a Brit in progress. Welcome to the UK. Hello, friends and neighbors. Welcome to day 90-something of lockdown in the UK. A little bit more energy. Everything was going really well up until that point. We were just kind of starting to level out on our finances, and we could kind of see the proverbial light at the end of the tunnel as far as our finances are concerned, because moving to another country is expensive, especially when you bring an animal with you. We were kind of struggling a little bit for the first 6 months I lived here, and by a little bit I mean a lot. But in the first week of March, everything was kind of starting to level out, and there was all this talk of this coronavirus thing, and everybody was getting sick, and everyone was talking about Italy at the time, because Italy was the worst hit country in Europe at the time, and everybody was like, oh, it's awful, it's the worst, and people were starting to get suspicious about it and starting to get kind of stressed out about it, and the food industry is no exception. We immediately lost our collective heads. People started talking about lockdown and closing restaurants and what was going to happen to all the jobs, and it turned out to be very justified, or at least for some people anyway. Government here came out with guidance that was kind of confusing initially, where if you had the symptoms of the virus, which I think at the time they were saying if you had a new and persistent cough and a fever, that you were supposed to isolate yourself for 2 weeks, right? Mm-hmm. Confirmed by the Helen. So you're supposed to isolate yourself for 2 weeks. So about 3 or 4 days after that announcement, I think, I developed a persistent cough and a fever. And that was the first week of March. I had to stay home from work for 2 weeks. And during that 2 weeks, everything kind of exploded here. The government moved towards stricter restrictions, and things started closing. And when I eventually went to go back to work at this unnamed popular hotel in Manchester city centre, I called, as per the guidance that I was given by the company, I called the general manager. No, he called me. Yeah, he called me the day before I was supposed to return to work to verify that I was okay, and also, by the way, tell me that my work contract was being canceled. They thought that it was imminent, that the government was going to force food service vendors to close restaurants and such, and to be fair, they were right on the cusp of that, so I can't fault them for that. It was just kind of messed up to be ready to go back to work and get a call of, oh, by the way, it's your last week. So that was annoying. To make matters worse, literally, I think it was literally an hour and a half, 2 hours after that phone call with the general manager of the hotel, the government announced the 80% wage furlough scheme that they were going to do after we had all, or after, I say we, but for the purposes of this me, after I had been informed that I was going to lose my job because of the coronavirus. The 80% furlough scheme was a scheme wherein the government would, if I understand correctly, and I might be wrong here, agree to reimburse companies 80% of pay for employees that they chose to put on furlough instead of firing. So instead of firing you, you would just be told to stay at home, and the company would pay 80% of your wage, and at some point that would get reimbursed by the government. I didn't actually read the regulation, I only read the Cliff Notes, but that is my basic understanding of it. And again, it was literally 2 hours after I had been let go. So I went into work the next day, and there was nothing going on, quite literally. I was at work for, I think it was a 10-hour day, and I think I made 2 plates of food. There was no one there. Absolutely no one. And that trend just continued. I only think I worked that day, and then I worked the Sunday. It was a Friday. It was a Saturday. I worked Saturday, Sunday, and then I think I worked the Monday. And then it was at the Monday where they told us, don't bother coming back. We're going to pay you for the rest of the time that we owe you, but don't bother coming back. Just stay at home, because they weren't going to be allowing service anymore. So that kind of put a damper on things. And there was this big sort of umming and ahhing of, were they actually going to fire us, because they had announced the furlough scheme. And I keep saying us, perhaps I should explain that. What the company decided was that anyone who was on their probation was going to be let go. So the evaluation period before like full working rights were bestowed. So it was a 3-month thing, and it was literally like 2 weeks away. So there were a bunch of other people who were on probation that also got let go, and it was awful. So, yeah. But it did end up coming back by the end of that first week, that we had to agree to changes in our contract, because in the UK, everyone works on contracts. It's very strange. We had to agree to changes in our contract that basically said that we agreed to allow the company to amend our contract to say that we would, instead of being let go, we would get furlough status until June 24th or the end of the scheme, whichever came first. And obviously, most people, actually I think everyone that I talked to took it, because it's been almost 3 months now, if not a little bit over 3 months, that there's been no sit-down service in restaurants in the UK. But thankfully, because they were able to pull that out of their hats, I don't know how, I've been getting paid 80% of my wage since then, so we haven't been completely wrecked by it yet. Also, Helen's been working from home the whole time, so her income hasn't changed, so it hasn't been as bad for us as it has been for some people, so I'm thankful for that. Yeah, so that's kind of the saga of COVID, and kind of what happened to a lot of people in the food industry. I was hearing, I'm not as well connected in the food industry here as I was back home, because I haven't worked here very long. But from what I was hearing from the people that I do know, it was mass layoffs in the first week. Just everywhere closed. A lot of places went under. A lot of restaurants were selling their food stock like it was a grocery store. It was absolutely crazy, and then everything completely shut down. There were only small venues that started doing takeaway and delivery service, and that's the way it's been. And there's a lot of skepticism on how the food service industry over here is going to recover, if it's going to recover, how long it's going to take. And with the impending specter of Brexit looming over everyone, which is going to cause an economic downturn anyway, probably, depending on who you ask. The future looks bleak for hospitality. So, I have 1 more month left on furlough, because it's June now. So I'll get my last furloughed paycheck in July, and then I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I have some plans, I have some ideas. I would like to not have to go back into food service if I don't have to, or if I do have to, I'd like to go back for part-time maybe, or what's probably going to end up happening here, I think, is a lot of food service hospitality jobs are going to come in at what in the UK are called 0-hour contracts, which mean or which means that you're not guaranteed any sort of set number of hours or set schedule, and it's not a very fun way to work. So that's probably what I foresee happening, and it's very scary to see, as someone that's been a chef or been in the food industry for 11 years, to see the amount of devastation that this could wreak on that industry, and with the adjacent industries, event planning, hotels, product design, things like that. It's insane. So, trying to remain hopeful, though, remain vigilant. I haven't been too depressed as things have evolved. I've got to spend so much time with Helen, and it's actually been a really amazing and rewarding experience to spend so much time with my wife. So early in our relationship, because you don't really. We've been at home together with seeing each other every day for almost 3 months, and that's really amazing, especially when you consider how we met originally and how we conducted our relationship for the first couple of years. So it has definitely been rewarding in unforeseen ways, at least for me, and I hope for Helen. So that's all I wanted to talk about today, just kind of what the impact has been on us and my limited knowledge of the impact it's had on the hospitality industry here in Manchester. And unfortunately, it looks bleak. So, on that somewhat depressing note, I hope you have an excellent day. Subscribe, tell me how things are going in your industry, in your town, or your city, or your country. Have a good night.